you can't be courageous without fear.
Yeah.
Right? Because if there was no fear, then what's there to be courageous about?
You're telling me, EJ, you need to change, you need to grow, you need to change your identity, but you're not doing it. Mm-hmm. And we're leaders in so many different roles, right? Like, you can't expect change unless you're changing yourself. I love that. What is up, everyone? My name is EJ Cruz, and this is The Parables, your go-to source for wisdom, inspiration, and real conversations to help you become your highest self. If you are new to the podcast, I welcome you and grateful that you are here today. And if you are a returning listener, follower, or watcher, depending on what platform you're tuning into, I welcome you back. And guys, I have a legend in the building. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have this individual back from the podcast. He's actually returning from season 1. If you do have a chance, please go back to episode 45 from season 1. To give you guys a little context, I don't think you remember this, by the way. The title is actually Touching the Dream on episode 45. Okay. And by the way, not just saying this, it's actually one of my highest downloaded or watched episodes. And so that's why I knew I had to have this individual back. But man, super, super excited to have this individual here. And while we're recording, I want to definitely just so, out openly, this individual here, I have so much admiration for. A little background. We met through a mutual friend, Sam Bakhtiar, rest in peace. We met at his house. We've, he was on season 1 of the podcast. We kind of did some stuff a little bit on the business side, and we just maintained contact, from time to time. But I got to tell you guys, of lots of people that I know, this is one of the most God-fearing individuals that I know. He has a very, very unique mindset in regards to personal development and growth. And, he's wildly successful in business. And probably the number one admiration I have about him and I look up to that we both share is fatherhood. Yeah. And I really mean like the text I sent you Father's Day. Those words, I really, really meant it. But guys, please welcome back to the podcast, Edwin Arroyave. I still pronounce that last name right?
You said it perfectly,
there
man.
We go. Edwin Arroyave, everyone. Welcome back, man.
It's great to be back, and I appreciate the kind words. They really do mean a lot. And a lot of things in common. And I can't believe it's been over 5 years since we did that podcast, probably 6 years.
Yeah.
Time flies, man.
Dude, 5 years, a big, we were kind of giving the tour of the studio, and a huge difference, right? From inviting you to like my guest room at my house to now just this. In 5 years, it was all in God's timing, to be honest, man.
And I mean, what a great setup. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. So,
yeah.
Although the studio was cool too at your house, it was intimate. It was cool.
Yeah.
But this is another level.
I remember with the 2 cameras, when record. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, awesome, dude. I'm actually really, really glad we're able to catch up and just kind of get a little update about yourself. But just real quick, again, guys, refer back to episode 45 in regards to Edwin's story. But just real quick, Edwin, if you could just give maybe a 30, 60 second, a little bit about yourself. So for those who are new to you, I could get to know you.
Yeah, so I'm an immigrant. I was born in Bogota, Colombia. My parents and I came to the U.S. when I was 6 years old in search of that American dream, which quickly became an American nightmare because due to some unfortunate circumstances, my family lost everything we had. So much so that at the age of 15 years old, I had to become basically the man of the house. And at the time I was lucky enough to get a job working at a call center, which was not a very ideal type of job for me because I was very shy and I was very timid. But I quickly got the courage to do this job I did not want to do, just out of desperation, because I was just tired of seeing my mom not be able to pay for the rent at the end of the month. I was tired of us not having enough food to eat at the end of the month because we're on food stamps. I was tired of my siblings, mother and I living in this tiny little bedroom without any windows. And lastly, I was just tired of roaches waking me up in the middle of the night. So really the avoidance of pain is what caused me to take action on something really that demanded more than I thought I was worth. And even though I was very shy and I was very timid, the one thing I did have going for me was that I was a huge dreamer. Like I always dreamt big, and I always felt like God was with me because my mom would always pray for me. every morning, every night. She always told me I was born to do something great with my life, and that one day I'd have a platform where I could talk about how God was a big part of my success. So I always felt confident in just taking things on that really I thought demanded more than I thought I was worth. But when I succeeded at those things, my identity started to grow, and I started to believe more and more about myself. And those were sort of the early years. And sort of fast forward to 6 years after that, I was 21 years old. I was making about $70,000 a year, very comfortable. I had 401k. I had, the whole, what else? Benefits. And then I had this opportunity to start my own business. And at the time, again, I was doing really well for myself from where I came from. But I knew that the money I was making wasn't going to make my dreams come true. So I knew eventually I had to take a risk. And when the opportunity came, I took the risk. And, here we are today. The company's been around for 26 years. It's made over $600 million.
Wow.
Just in the last two years, we've done over close to 300 million. So, we're now doing in 2 to 3 years what's taken me 23 years to do before. So, very excited about it. But through that, it's been a lot of ups, and there's definitely been a lot of downs. And I think when you've been in business for as long as I have, I think you realize that there comes some downs. I've probably had to rebuild 5 different times, but each time we've come back stronger than we were before.
A testament to your resilience, by the way.
Thank you. But yeah, it's been some dark times through those rebuilding years. So that's kind of a long story short. So, I'll let you kind of guide me from there on where you want me to go, because we can go many, many ways.
Yeah. That's what I love about just us catching up. I purposely did not want to talk about anything personal actually until we started recording, just for us to catch up. But one thing I forgot to mention in the introduction was there's a select few of people that I see who have grown tremendously for the amount of time I've known them. I've known you for about 7 to 8 years. And I feel like I've almost had a front row seat, but from afar, because you're not shy of sharing your testimony. You're not shy of sharing your personal growth, how much your business has grown. And I just feel like of a lot of people that I know, you've had significant growth. Yeah. Right. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because I feel like, is that just do you feel like you're in a new season in your life, or what's if you could just go over that in regards to what did that growth really look like for the past 7 to 8 years?
So I think on the personal side, it's continuing to challenge yourself. There was an area of my life that I knew I wanted to get better at, and I knew it was going to be a big, big challenge, but I knew that I wasn't happy. At the end of the day, there was always this empty feeling that I had, and I wanted to get closer to my faith. And so I started associating with people that were also wanting to do the same thing, right? It's like our parents say, you are who you associate with. So when I wanted to do better in business, I associated with people that were doing better than me in business, right? And then when I wanted to do better on my faith, I started to associate myself with people that were doing better in faith. And I began to focus on that because it was the one thing that I still hadn't given my full attention to. And everything else I sort of did already, but I was still feeling empty, and it was always this empty feeling in my heart. And I started really focusing on that, and then I started getting sort of what I wanted, where I started to live inside out versus exterior in. Okay. And what I realized is that I've always loved, when I talked about touching the dream in the first episode, I've always loved material things. I've always liked nice things. I like unique things. Yeah. And for a while that drove me quite a bit. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. I started realizing that, big houses, big cars, women, alcohol, those things brought you pleasure, but they didn't really bring you happiness. Yeah. And what I realized is that because those things are pleasure is a sensation, so therefore it's eventually going to get balanced out by the pain that you have to go through in life, by the discomfort that you have to go through. So I started more looking into, okay, how can I live inside out versus, knowing those things don't bring me happiness. They bring me pleasure, and hey, nothing wrong with pleasure, have fun with pleasure. But eventually it's going to run out because pleasure, it's a sensation.
Yeah. Would you say you had to get that out of your system? Like that was like a phase in your life? Okay.
Yeah, I had to get it out of my system. But, at the end of the day, I wasn't happy. So then I started to focus more on living inside out, which, one of the ways you do that is obviously gratitude. So I started really focusing on gratitude exercises every day, which was a big, big game changer for me. And then the other one was, learning how to take a negative and turn it into a positive. That one I was always really good with. Mm-hmm. The gratitude I wasn't as good with, right? Because it was the constant, we're pre-programmed to focus on what we don't have versus on what we have. Mm-hmm. And really, as I started to read more scripture and started to focus more on those things, I started living more inside out versus outside in.
Yeah.
So, the material stuff will fill you until it doesn't. And at that point, that's where you sort of, I think, need to go spiritual, right? You can't fill spiritual void with material things, and that's really where I started to focus more on living inside out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the thing is, like, there's never going to be enough in the material world. There's never going to be enough money. There's never going to be enough women's sex if that's your thing, so eventually I just had to get better with me, knowing that, there was never going to be enough and I need to figure something else out. And that's when I started really focusing on that side of my life.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you've seen a big change on my personal life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I still don't have fun. I still have lots of fun, but it's a different kind of fun.
You've always been unapologetic when it comes to, your faith, mm-hmm. right? And that's one of the things I admire about you. How has your relationship with God really influenced kind of like your direction with your life and your business? Because you intertwine that a lot, right? Like, in regards to, like, your faith is huge in regards to what drives you, what leads you in regards to your family, to your relationships, to your business. How's that look like?
Yeah, so it's brought a lot of accountability to me, right? Because I know that even though no one's watching, someone is watching, right? And that's my relationship with him. And every time that I don't keep a promise I make to myself or do the right thing, obviously there's someone that is watching it. So I think the accountability that's brought me has been huge. But then also, I always had great faith when it came to the business side of things. My personal side was a little different, right? Mm-hmm. In that, because I had early success, what I saw was that part of having success at a young age was you have a lot of women around. Mm-hmm. And I just always had a lot of women around. Mm-hmm. And that kind of was not allowing me to get as close to my faith as I probably should, right? Mm-hmm. So I found myself living sort of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of type mm-hmm. of life, where when it came to my business, I was like Mr. Responsible, I was Mr. Integrity, I was Mr. Everything you need to be. But when it came to my personal life, it was a total different life. It was irresponsible. It was
the degenerate side that we spoke about.
Yeah, it was arrogant. It was, definitely I'm doing you a favor versus you doing me a favor. But I was confused at the time, and all I know is that I just had this big void in my heart, and I was just like, there's got to be more than this. Like, right when I felt like I had all that I wanted from that material side, I still felt empty. So I'm like, all right, I got to try something else, because I've already tried this.
Yeah.
I've already gone the whole, womanizing route, and mm-hmm. that still didn't get me going. I'm still empty. And then that's when I got close to my faith.
Was there a defining moment of when that transition changed, or were you just kind of like fed up and just felt really like an emptiness in your heart, to where, you knew like the material stuff, the women wasn't important, wasn't rewarding, mm-hmm. right? It didn't feel that way. Was there a defining moment, like something that happened in your life, or was it
I think, there was a lead up to that, right? Okay. And I think
like
that's
a
build up to that. So I was struggling with it for about 7 years, 8 years. And I'd do great, and then I'd have sort of a relapse with it, right? With women, right? That's the one problem I had a problem. What I had a problem with was women before, right? And I'd have a relapse from it, and then I'd go sort of straight, and then boom, down, and then. But it's just like anything. You got to get up one more time and do it again, and get up one more time, and then. But it finally got to the point where, I was willing to leave my family for it, and I couldn't control it, and I just thought to myself, I can't let something like that. It's the only thing that ever had control over me, and it wasn't like I was never into strip clubs. I was never into porn. I was never into that. I was into the chase of, having a girl fall in love or whatever it is, right?
It's like the rush, right?
The rush of that.
Yeah.
So, but it was almost like I got fulfillment from let me rephrase that. I didn't get fulfillment from that. I thought I was. That was my validation, right?
Yeah.
And I sort of got, my self-worth was tied to that, because the first time I started getting attention from people was when I would bring hot women around. So I'd bring hot women around, then, all of a sudden people wanted to be my friends. Executives wanted to be my friends. And
it's like this image, right?
Yeah, people that I always admired all of a sudden were like, hey, they wanted to be my friends. So I was like, oh, you bring hot women, you get...
This is how I get friends.
This is how I get attention, right?
Yeah.
So, and then again, just those days, I mean, late 90s, early, the Tupac days and all those days. I mean, that's all rap. I guess technically that's what rappers talk about now too, but that's what I thought fame was. All right. Success was, right? You're young, you're making money. Part of making money is you have women, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought, because that's what I saw. And then again, eventually I just felt empty about it. Yeah. And I needed to change. And then I started, working on that. And then I went completely clean. I didn't think I could ever do that, but I did. So, yeah.
So it sounded like it was a buildup. And there's that saying, nothing changes if nothing changes. And you finally, you got what we call that realization.
Yeah, it was, when you're trying to stop something, it just comes more in your face, Yeah. And I was trying and I was doing well, but that temptation would come even more and more. Like I wasn't even looking for it. It would just start coming my way, and then I would justify it in my head. I would be like, "Oh, I'm not even looking for it. It's just here. I guess it's meant to be. It's who I am. It's what I'm meant to do." And those were the BS, excuses that I would make to justify some of those moves. And then finally it just came to the point where, shoot, I almost left my family over this. And I never wanted something to control me like that again. Yeah. So everybody's got their vice. That was mine. And I wanted to just nip it in the butt. And, and it's done. And now I just don't put myself in those type of situations where it even becomes a temptation or anything like that.
Yeah. The growth has been extraordinary. It sounds like. Do you find it personally? Because for some people, I always hear that story. Like when they make the change, it's almost like the temptation and the difficulty and the challenges is harder.
Oh, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, it gets harder and harder versus when you were in that world.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Was it harder for you for sure? Like in regards to when you made that stop?
It's interesting. It was around the time we started filming, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
So in many ways, when you go on that show, people say it's going to break up your marriage. In many ways, it actually strengthened our marriage, because now when I was on the show, it was like, oh, shoot, the most random people watch this show. Yeah. And the last thing I want to do is end up on some tabloids that I was with other women and stuff. So that also helped with, not putting myself in those situations, just the fear of that, right? The avoidance of pain, right? And the more and more that I went without it, I was like, wait a minute, it's happening. I'm doing it. And then 6 months became a year became two became three, and I went all in on it.
So it sounds like it did the opposite, which is good.
Yeah, it did the opposite, 100%.
Strengthen you guys' relationship.
But at least the strength, as far as, that side, it totally did, It's what helped me get out of the, situation that I was in.
Yeah. Last thing on your faith, and we'll move on to like the business side.
Yeah. And there's a lot of faith to the business side as well.
Oh, yeah.
So that's been a huge part of my success.
For someone that's a high performer such as yourself, how do you maintain such a strong spiritual foundation during like high pressure environments and just, everything in life? in regards to, like being the CEO of your company and just being a high performer? How do you stay grounded in that, in your faith and your spirit with all that?
Well, I think that's the thing that probably helps the most. I think the way I've dealt with struggles has been my faith is, as simple as it sounds. I often talk about how happiness is not the absence of problems. It's your ability to deal with them, right? Again, happiness is not the absence of problems. It's your ability to deal with them. And I think I started to learn that problems are a good thing, right? We talked about this on season 1. Problems are a good thing because they challenge you, right? And it's your ability to solve them.
Versus trying to avoid them.
Trying to avoid them, because if you run away from problems, then you don't get good at solving them. And at an early age, 16 years old, the manager at that at that call center that I worked for basically told me, hey, the more problems you can solve, the more pressure you can take, the more stress you can take, the more money you're going to make. So I just always became really good at solving problems by going through them and not running away from them, going through that pain. And the way I've always been able to do that, as simple as this sounds, is my faith, which is, again, there's the biblical part of it, right? Which is, I'm a follower of Christ, which gives me confidence to take on things that demand more than I think I'm worth. But there's also, even if you're maybe not a religious person, faith is just the projection of the most beautiful thing for the future. It's the projection of the most positive thing for the future, versus fear is the projection of the worst possible thing for the future. So whether you like it or not, you're faith-based. It's up to you if you choose to be positive or if you choose to be negative. It takes the same amount of mental energy to focus on failure as it does success. So I've always just focused on the success part. I've always felt like, okay, some way, somehow this will work itself out as long as I focus on the things that I can control. And all these other things that are making me feel or pulling me towards the fear side because I can't control them, I don't pay attention to that. And that's where the faith comes in. That's where, God will put the right people in place to make this part that looks impossible possible. But I'm just going to take action on what I know I'm in control of, right? That's why, I often say that the cost of inaction is almost always greater than the cost of making a mistake.
So true.
Right? And every time I've gone through tough times, it's just, I take a lot of action towards that worry that I have. And I have faith that it'll work itself out. And I understand that it's going to be a temporary discomfort. It's not supposed to be easy.
Scaling forward, basically.
Yeah,
right?
It's not supposed to be easy, right? On the other side of your failure is going to be your future, because it's how you respond from those failures that really determines your future. And again, every time I've failed, I always go back to that faith. And 90% of winning in life, as simple as it sounds, is just positive. I call it positive mental attitude. You focus on the positive stuff. Most people can't do that. Most people are always looking at the negative. Right? And that's what they get fixated on. And again, fear, faith, they both haven't happened yet. It's up to you on what route you want to take. I choose faith.
Yeah, it's like choosing your heart, right? It's like choosing you're choosing your path. But I love that because I've adopted that mindset as well, especially like, when I'm dealing with the kids or something. I always tell my, I always ask myself, okay, God, I take a deep breath. I'm like, what are you teaching me here? What are you teaching me here? Right? And that's that positive mindset. Like, what's the lessons I could learn from this, and what's this building me up to?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and when you think about it, like a lot of people want to have big faith, but they don't want to have big problems. So what's the point of having big faith if you have no problems?
Yeah.
Right? Like, in order to have faith, you need problems, right? It's almost like people want to be courageous. Well, you can't be courageous without fear.
Yeah.
Right? Because if there was no fear, then what's there to be courageous about?
Yeah. You need that stepping stone or that catalyst to get that.
Yeah. If you want courage, then you better have some fear in your life, right? So anytime you're going to do something great with your life, you're always going to be scared, right? If you're not scared, whether you have faith or not, right, you're going to feel scared, right? And if you're not, that means you're probably not dreaming big enough. that probably means you're not going after bigger things. But because anytime you're going to do something big with your life, it's never going to feel just great. You're always going to be scared. It's always going to be, but that's where that's what faith is, right? Faith is taking action before you have what you need.
So is it safe to say that it's definitely a good thing to be scared? Like if something does scare you, give you fear, whether it's like a decision of, I don't know, changing your career or like moving or, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the number one thing. It's the number one way to build your identity, right? You're never going to out-earn your self-worth. So the way you build your identity, in addition to having associations that are teaching you how to do better, is by putting yourself in a circumstance that demands more than you think you're worth. And then when you succeed at that, then your self-worth automatically goes up. Yeah. But if something demands more than you think you're worth, then if you just examine that, it demands more than you think you're worth. Well, if it demands more than you think you're worth, it's always going to scare you. So what happens is most people get paralyzed and they never step into that uncertainty. And the only way you know if you can do it or not is by trying it.
Yeah, it's a natural process.
And
basically.
most people won't try it. And because they don't try it, they never believe it in their heart. Because you're never going to believe something in your heart unless you experience it, right? You can talk about it all you want, but until you step into that arena of uncertainty and then figure it out, you won't believe it. But then once you figure it out, you're like, oh, shoot, I did it. And then that builds a new level of self-belief. So if you think about it, we all have this unlimited potential, right? However, it is limited to where you're at today.
Yeah.
So in other words, at 15 years, a perfect example is at 15 years old, I totally dreamed the life that I have today, right? Everything you see that I have, I dreamt it at 15 years old.
I remember you would drive to houses, right?
Oh,
yeah.
I would visualize all that stuff. And everything from even being on TV. I actually visualized that one day I was going to be on TV. I don't normally talk about that, but I actually did visualize it as a kid. I visualized that one day my friends would make fun of me because I was like, man, one day I don't know how I'm going to do it, man, but I'm going to end up on Us magazine. I literally would talk about that stuff.
I've done a little bit of that too myself. I'm not gonna lie.
And it all happened, right?
Yeah.
And now at 15 years old, I dreamt it. Did I believe it? Heck no, I didn't believe it. But every new accomplishment that I made me believe a little more. So at 16 years old, when I became the supervisor, I started to believe, well, maybe I could become the manager by 18 years old. And I became the manager at 18 years old. I started making 60 grand at 18 years old. Then I was like, whoa, maybe I can make 100 grand by the age of 21 years old. And then when I started my business at 21 years old and I made 150 grand that year, I was like, whoa, I'm 21 years old. I'm making 150 grand. My self-worth kept climbing and the belief kept climbing. The first time I bought myself a $2 million house, I was scared. I was freaked out. I was like, man, can I afford this? Can I not? But it wasn't until I stepped into the uncertainty of buying it that I was like, oh, piece of cake.
Yeah.
Right? I wonder if I could afford a beach house and not have to sell my $2 million. And then I did that. And I was like, whoa, did that. I wonder if I could now buy my dream home that I've always wanted and not have to get rid of any of my houses. And each time I was scared, but each time when I figured it out, it brought my identity up. That's why, again, you have this unlimited potential, but it is limited to where you're at today, which is why you got to continue to step into these circumstances that demand more than you think you're worth and sort of build that muscle of courage. And you start building more and more of that muscle, the more you get used to doing hard things that scare you, right? And then eventually it just doesn't scare you as much because you've done it so many times.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is not new territory for me.
Yeah, it's like you're building a muscle, right? That's why you never want things to be too easy, because if things are too easy, you never build the muscles that you'll need when life gets harder. See, people think that life gets easier as you become more successful. It gets a lot harder. You make it look easy because you get so much better.
A huge myth, right?
Right.
Like in regards to the more successful you get, like it's supposed to be harder, like you'll get comfortable. The reality is it gets harder. It's
way harder.
Yeah.
It just, you're able to
maintaining it, right? Maintaining it.
You're just able to take on more because it's like going to the gym. You've weightlifted, you have all these muscles, you have the strength of like, what used to affect you big time doesn't affect you that much.
Yeah.
It's just like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's part of life. You get some bad, you get some bad seasons and you move forward. You can't, fear is an interesting thing. Fear gives you 3 future responses to your future, right? Fear, first of all, what fear does is it paralyzes you. Then it makes you procrastinate. So now you have to move forward. You know what you need to do. So first of all, it paralyzes you so you don't move forward. Mm-hmm. Then you're like, okay, I need to move forward because I can't just stay like this. But then you procrastinate. You know what you need to do.
But you still don't do it.
You still don't do it.
Yeah.
So then the third thing it does is it brings paranoia. Now you become paranoid, and that's what causes you to quit. Because when you become paranoid, that's when you start overthinking everything in your mind. And you're never going to overthink positive, but you will always overthink negative.
Yeah.
And then when you have all those thoughts, you go into low frequency and then you quit.
Deal.
Then you quit, you know?
Yeah.
And you quit because the root of it is inaction.
Yeah.
You stood paralyzed because it scared the crap out of you. So it's whatever scares you, whatever worry you have, you just got to attack it. You got to take action towards it. And then you start seeing that worry go away.
So from what I'm hearing is definitely if it's hard, it's probably a good thing. Stack your wins. It'll build your confidence. It'll take you to unknown territory. It's reps, and eventually it'll just be natural to you.
Correct. And it's incredible what you can do if you just show up. Like, I think the world doesn't reward, at least in my experience, it doesn't reward the most prepared. It rewards the people that show up every day, that have perseverance, that have the urgency, and that have this unshakable belief that they're meant to do something better in their life. And they're just going to figure it out. But I'd say other than my dreaming big, which is the hope part, other than my big faith, and other than believing in me, I just show up. I haven't done anything special other than show up no matter how I'm feeling, right? And it's, as Ben Newman says all the time, it's standards over feelings, right? The difference between average and elite people is elite people can get things done, even though their whole world might be falling apart. They still figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Right? Because anyone can do things when things are going great for them. Like, of course, you're supposed to do great when your life is perfect, but it's, can you still get things done when you're getting hit by, the pain that you have to go through in life, right? Because life and pain are inseparable. You're always going to go through some dark times, and it's in those days where you got to figure out how to still get it done. And those are the biggest identity building days. Sometimes your hardest days will be your biggest wins.
It reminds me of that famous quote, and I don't want to butcher it, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That one, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands, I think, in comfort, but where he stands in controversy and the challenges, I think it is. Yeah, such a powerful quote. Yeah.
Your character will always be revealed under pressure, right? Under pressure, your character will be revealed, which is why you want to have good habits, right? Habits are reflexive. And, for me, as we talked about earlier, when it came to the faith, it's, at the end of the day, when all your talent runs out, when your looks run out, whatever it is, the one thing that will never run out is your character. So the more success that I got, the more I was about, okay, let me focus on the character, right? Because I saw the opposite from other people that were successful. The more successful they became, the more they ran away from faith. The more they ran away from
their character went out of whack.
Their character went out of whack because they couldn't control. They let success master them versus mastering success. And one of the ways that I wanted to master success was by focusing, on my character. By the way, real quick, so one of the things I love about Jesus is that everything he taught was transferable, and it's all character traits. Yeah. Right? So one of my favorite books by Erwin McManus talks about it. It's The Genius of Jesus. And that's what he talks about, right? It's just everything he taught is transferable. Whereas if you're Michael Jordan, you can try to be Michael Jordan all you want, but if you're not 6'6" and you don't got a 48-inch vertical, it ain't going to happen. Doesn't matter how much you work at it. And what made Jesus a genius was that everything he thought, empathy, transferable, right? Not worried about doing right, but doing good, right? When he came in to the world, it wasn't, the Pharisees were always worried about doing right instead of doing good. So those kind of things he taught, you know, how to take the power away from somebody very powerful is not to let them harden your heart, you know? So, again, all great character traits and stuff. So
yeah. I love that.
By the way, speaking of resiliency, gratitude will give you resiliency, right? Because when you're grateful, you're unlikely to see failure as personal or permanent because there's so many things that you're grateful for. That's why it's so important to cultivate gratitude. Another one to build resiliency is faithfulness, which is really discipline, right? If you're good with the little things, you'll be good with the big things, right? But it's under pressure, are you still disciplined, right? Yeah. Doing all the little things that no one else wants to do, all the boring stuff that no one else wants to do, right? And then the other one is humility. If you want to be resilient, if you want to be around for a long time, you have to be humble, right? That means you have to be a lifetime student. You got to constantly try to get better, because the minute you think you know it all, you just capped your growth.
Yeah, so true.
Right? And the more that you're arrogant, you know, and you start, you know, and you start living in the clouds, the harder that drop's going to be.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things for me that has always helped out is no matter how much success I got, I always kind of felt like, man, you're 1 minute away from losing everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Is that your biggest fear? I feel like that's some people's biggest fear, that they could just lose it all instantly and they never want to go back to maybe like their previous life or anything like that.
I think, yeah, the avoidance of pain is definitely a big driver for me. Also, the pleasure of where I'm going. Like, I always know sort of where I'm trying to get in life, what I'm trying to work on. That's why I like touching the dream before I have what I need, right?
Yeah.
So it's always been a little bit of both, but I think for me, it was just the understanding of like, it could all be taken away from you in a snap of a finger, right? God forbid you get a terminal illness, and then what, you know? So I think that's always kept me grounded. It's always allowed me to always treat people with respect. You know, I've always felt like if people were going to come work with me was because of the way I treated them and because of my strength and character.
Yeah.
And I think that's allowed me to stay in business for a long time. It's allowed me to be resilient. So those 3 character traits will allow you to be resilient and be in business for a long time, right?
Yeah.
I'm a byproduct of just making decent money for a long time. It becomes a lot of money.
I noticed, so when it comes to your business, like Skyline, a big transition in your business was you implemented a lot of personal development and leadership into like your training programs, I believe, or things like that. What was the key with that? Like, what was the shift that made you want to focus on that a lot?
Well, a shift for me originally, the root of that was from experience. When in 2016, I finally surpassed my self-worth, and I couldn't understand the type of money that I was making anymore. So I started to self-sabotage. And the reason I couldn't understand the money I was making, or I couldn't believe that I was worthy of it, is because the self-limiting belief that I had suppressed for many years all of a sudden started to resurface, which was I wasn't very smart. The reason I thought I wasn't very smart was because the school system made me believe I wasn't very smart, because I graduated with a 1.8 GPA. So in the back of my mind, I always thought, man, I wasn't that smart. So as the company started growing, I started hiring people that were, that had college degrees, that had master's degrees, and even my sales guys all had bachelor's degrees, and some of them had master's degrees as sales guys. And I'm like, man, they're going to start realizing that I've just been getting lucky this entire time. So this sort of imposter syndrome started to come in. And when that happens is, again, your subconscious mind will always prove itself correct. So deep down, my subconscious mind didn't believe I was that smart and didn't believe that I was worth that kind of money. So I started to self-sabotage, and my personal life started going downhill. My business started going downhill. That's when I ran into the whole, I was willing to live I almost left my family, right? It was all self-sabotaging that I was doing. And I knew what the problem was at the time. Luckily, I knew, we all kind of know what the problem is, right? We just procrastinate on it. I knew that the problem was I wasn't studying on my mindset, because the call center that I worked for from 15 to 21 years old, they always made us work on, before we'd get on the phones to sell, they would always give us leadership development, personal development classes. And we would study for an hour every day before we'd get on the phones. And like a dummy, at 20, when I started my own company, I stopped studying on my mindset. Never, for 20 years, I didn't pick up a book. I didn't work on my mindset. I didn't do any of that. And sure enough, that's where it sort of resurfaced, that because I wasn't working on that. And then I remember just finally I was like, I got to take action towards this. I know what the worry is. And I picked up a book, 10X by Grant Cardone. At first I couldn't read it. So then I got the audio, then I couldn't retain that either. So I literally wrote out 75% of the book. Wow. And that's the way I was able to retain the information. But once I retained the information, I was like, wait a minute, everything that's in this book I had already done. I just didn't know how to articulate it. And I was like, well, this guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I guess I should be worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
You're like, I'm already doing this. What the heck's going on here?
And then I started studying Ed Mylett, who's become a great friend and mentor of mine. And I started noticing that everything he was talking about, I'd also done. I just didn't know how to articulate it. And I said, well, shit, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars too. So I guess I must be pretty smart. And then what happens is my subconscious mind started to rise up to what I was saying consciously. And whenever you can get your subconscious mind to align with your conscious mind, you literally will start speaking things into existence. And then the company, took off from there. And again, if we're created in God's image, to go back to, the biblical side, if we're created in God's image and God is about truth, then if we're about truth, why shouldn't we be able to speak things into existence? Yeah. And that's where I think the subconscious mind and aligning with what you're saying consciously, it'll attract everything. It'll attract all the people to make those dreams happen. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened to me at that point. When I did that, my wife booked that show, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That opened up the gateway to a bunch of salespeople that normally wouldn't have came work for me, but now they knew me because of the show. Yeah. And then sure enough, Grant Cardone calls me to come out on his podcast. And then I did his podcast, and then I did Ed Mylett's podcast, and then that whole thing started. But it really it started from that. And then I said to myself, well, if it happened to me, I could only imagine what happens to other people with their self-limiting beliefs. Because luckily for me, I did have that self-limiting belief, but I was still a big dreamer, and I still had a pretty high identity until eventually you pass it. Yeah. And then once you pass that identity, it's like, okay, what are you going to do to get your subconscious mind to really believe that you're at that level? Yeah. And again, the only way to do that is by putting yourself, again, in circumstances that demand more than you think you're worth, and then succeeding at those. But then it's also the association part, which is the personal development side. Because a lot of people might say, well, Edwin, I don't have mentors that make 7 figures that I could hang out with. Well, you don't need to hang out with them. You could just read up on them. You could listen to other podcasts. You can listen to, their YouTube, and they'll give you all the answers if you actually listen, if you actually sit down and write the information versus try to listen to it while you're in your car. Yeah.
Or you could work for a company that focuses on that.
Exactly. And, my vision now is, I mentioned earlier, we've been lucky enough to make over 600 million in 25 years. And, we've done over 200 just in the last 2. That's incredible, man. So I want to help. I want to do in the next 2 to 3 years what's taken us 25 years to do. And while I do it, I want to help create the most 6, 7, 8 figure a year earners that our industry has ever created. Yeah. So, and that's already happening. My top guy in the company last year did 5 million. My second guy did 4 million. So, and we have quite a bit of 7-figure earners. So but the only way that happens is if I build people's identity, because you could have all the talent. If your identity doesn't match the talent, it's just never going to happen. Yeah, yeah. I love that. So that's where personal development comes in.
Yeah, I love that. And, our mutual friend, Ed Mylett, like he talks about you're the most qualified to help the person you used to be. And that's what you're doing. You're transferring it over. Correct. Right? You're transferring over. And like, I could only imagine, those working for your company when you're building their identity, their self-belief, their confidence, they're making money. Like, why would I ever leave?
Right. Well, it's a great point that you bring up, because I do believe that education is the number one component to loyalty. Because when you can educate people, as long as they can validate that what you're teaching them is true, then you look like an expert in front of them. So now they're going to want to be in business with you because they're learning from you. But more importantly, you create emotion, you create empathy, because now you're teaching them things that no one else took the time to teach them. Not even the school system taught them. And now they're willing to go through a wall for you. And, they'll... that's how you create extremism, right? Where people are just ready to go and do whatever it takes for you because you're teaching them things. But in order to do that, you got to continue to grow. And it's what I said about the humility part of, continuing to be a lifetime student so that you can continue to teach. The more you grow, the more you can teach your juniors. I often seen when people end up leaving you is because you stopped educating them. There's nothing more they can learn from you. So they're like, well, what do I need you for? And then, you could say, well, I've done all this for you in the past, but the reality of it is we're in a business just like sports, right? Where it's like, what have you done for me lately, right? It doesn't, you won 8 Super Bowls before, but you're not going to do it again. So we're going to have to go a different direction, right? So in many ways that is sales, right? So you got to continue to get better. And I think when you stop growing, that's when, you stunt everyone else's growth in your business. And eventually the ones that are wanting to do more and more will eventually leave you because now their dream doesn't fit inside of yours anymore because they're surpassing your dream.
Yeah, I love that, because that's basically leading by example. If you're telling me, EJ, you need to change, you need to grow, you need to change your identity, but you're not doing it. And we're leaders in so many different roles, right? Like we wear so many different hats, whether you're a CEO, you're the head of your household or whatever it may be, right? Like you can't expect change unless you're changing yourself. And I love that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So that's been, and that's why you see a lot of, like I said, we became a personal development company that just happens to be in home security and that just happens to be in solar because I finally out-earned my self-worth and I knew how big it was to me. That's why we originally started it. Yeah. But, as I've seen like network marketing companies, they'll fill up arenas of just raving fans and 95% of the people are broke in that arena.
Yeah. Yet they're not making money. Yeah.
Yet they're raving fans. And what they all have in common is that all these network marketing companies all have great leadership development.
They're inspirational.
So as long as people are growing, sometimes that's worth more than money, right? People want to feel like they're progressing in life. Yeah. And that's why now imagine if you could help people make money and then you also help them on the personal development side. You have amazing culture.
I was going to say, like, I think what you did was brilliant because you saw this opportunity, but let's solve this other problem. Let's bring the growth to, a business, but let's also help you make money at the same time. So now it's just like a win-win.
Correct. Yeah. And you make it fun, you got to make it fun. Sales sometimes isn't fun. So, especially with what we do, our guys go door-to-door sales, right? So it's not as fun.
One of the hardest things.
One of the hardest things. So I had to make it fun. And, I always say we're really in the dream-making, create a millionaire leadership development industry that just happens to be in home security, that just happens to be in solar. Yeah. We've literally turned our business into a sport, into a recognition, into a competition. Yeah. So while the competition is playing a different game, more of like, hey, we're going to go door-to-door sales. We're playing a different game. Yeah. We make you feel like a Academy Award winner, a sports athlete, and we make it fun. And the reason we do that is because there's millions of people out there that want to win, that want to compete, that want to be someone, versus there's not that many people that want to go door to door, right? So I had to change and make it fun, right? So we're part of home security, renewable energy, but we're not of it, right? We're more into the whole competition, recognition, create a millionaire dream-making business.
So would that be your advice for maybe a business owner that's looking to, bring on talent or retain their employees? 100%. Is not only help them make money, but of course, making sure that they're also personally growing.
100%. That's probably worth more than what you're paying them. Because again, people want to feel like they're progressing.
It's about a feeling, yeah.
Because at some point the money runs, like at some point the money's not a driver anymore. They'll get bored, right? So competition's great, incentives are great, recognition is huge. You know, every great sales company has great recognition.
Yeah.
Every great sales company has great leadership development, right? Because it's about building people's identities and helping them grow, not just on the finance side, but in all areas of their life. And the more you can do that, the more they're going to be loyal to you. And it shows that you care, right? Because if I'm teaching you how to become a better person and I'm teaching you things that no one else has taught you, you're automatically going to think, man, this guy actually cares about me. He wants me to become the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And that's huge, right? At the end of the day, people just want to feel like they're
acknowledged.
They're acknowledged. They're seen. You love people. You care about them. You show them how to live better, and you believe in them.
Yeah,
they're going to go through a wall for you.
Yeah. Real quick, before we change subjects here? What was the idea? Like, what caused you to definitely shift and get into smart energy? Because I thought that was brilliant when you decided to make that move.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to do it.
Okay.
I was forced into do it.
Yeah. Actually, I never asked you this question because, the time we know each other, you were working on that. And I remember I think you were in the trenches at that time. I remember you telling me.
I still am in the trenches on that one. I was forced to get into it because at the end of 2020, I lost 25% of my sales team to solar.
That's right. Okay.
So everybody started recruiting against me because in solar, you were able to make 10 times the amount for almost the same amount of work.
Yeah.
And solar was really, really easy at the time. And people were just making millions upon millions. Like people that weren't successful before were just making all types of money.
That was the gold rush. Is it still the gold rush right now? I'm curious. I don't even know.
Oh, now everybody's running out from it because it's gotten harder. In some crazy way, that makes me happy. I'm like, I like when things get hard because now it filters out all the freaking people that should have never been in the business.
That's your opportunity. Yeah.
That's your opportunity to grow and take over, right? Versus, if I had a choice, do I want something so easy that everybody and their mothers is doing it? Or do I want something hard where it eliminates most of the competition? I'd rather do something that's hard where it eliminates most of the competition and I can take over an industry that has a lot of potential. And solar is the future. But like anything, it's going through a downtime. Mm-hmm. But eventually, whoever weathers the storm is going to take over. Yeah. And they're going to be very well off for a long time. Yeah. But what ends up happening to most people, which is the same thing that happened in security in 2020, because remember, I also owned the home security company. Yeah. At the end of 2020, home security was going through a very, very down time. So what happens? Everyone left home security to jump into the easy thing, which was solar, right? Now solar is getting really hard. Everybody's trying to jump back into security.
So that's why I say it's brilliant what you did, because it's almost like, those two, I guess you could say, industries or worlds are kind of like hand in hand to each other almost, right?
Yeah.
Existing clientele, right? Things like that.
Yeah. So now it's like people that are trying to compete with me on the security side, it's very hard for them to compete because I've been doing it for 5 years. I went through that tough time. Yeah. And now I'm just way ahead of them, right? Yeah. And again, the same thing will happen in the solar. But what happens is when you run away from when things get hard and you just try it and you continue to look for easy, eventually every industry gets hard. Yeah. So, you've seen it in mortgage, you've seen it in real estate, like you've seen it in financial services. Like you have your booms and then you have some down years, then you have your booms again, right? But the people that are always chasing the easy, you'll never see them sustain money for a long time. Yeah. They'll make money for maybe a couple years, but then they'll lose it all. Yeah. Because when things get hard, they don't know how to deal with it, so they end up losing it all. Yeah. So eventually there is no more running. Yeah. So what happens is when there's no more running, most people end up losing everything because they've never built the muscles to sustain those big uppercuts that come in life. Yeah. But if you've actually gone through it, and you've gone through the pain and you've gone through those down cycles, when the next big down cycle comes, you're just like, perfect. This is for me. This is time for me to take over because I know now everybody's going to get crushed kind of deal, you know? And you're just a little more confident, not in a cocky way. You just know, right? On the other side of perseverance is wisdom. A lot of people don't have wisdom because they've never persevered, so they don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah. It's a true testament of your resilience, like the leadership, right? And I like to think like the business that withstanded like the tough times versus the easy times, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that's where the discipline comes in, right? Because out of discipline comes perseverance, and out of perseverance comes wisdom.
Love that.
But if you don't have the discipline, because again, when pressure hits, your character will be revealed, right? So if under pressure, you all of a sudden lose your discipline, right? You now don't do the small things, all the stuff that you know you're supposed to be doing, because now you're in your head about things, and you go take off for a week, a month, and you're running away from pain. You're not faithful. You're not disciplined with all the little things, which is what's going to help you persevere, which then gives you the wisdom to know that, on the other side of your pain is your greatness. On the other side of your fear is your freedom. And then again, on the other side of your failure is your future.
What I've learned is, especially being in the financial space for a little bit, is that whether you have a lot of money or you don't have a lot of money, it really reveals your true character. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing in regards to not even just money, but just the hardships of whatever else you're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
So,
and again, it's why you want to have good character, right? And when the pressure comes, are you about integrity, or do you all of a sudden become a liar? When pressure hits, do you let fear overcome you, or are you about courage? Yeah. Again, when pressure comes, do you stay humble, or do you become arrogant? Yeah. Are you still generous under pressure, or do you become, non-giving, right? You all of a sudden don't want to serve. Yeah. So things like that.
And I want to shift gears here now.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, my favorite thing about you, like I mentioned, fatherhood.
Yeah.
Right. I still remember when you called me when Dove was still in the womb, right?
Yeah.
And you were at the hospital and things like that. But I love when you post about, Dove, Cruz. But just real quick, for someone like yourself, what does fatherhood mean to you?
I think for me, it's being an example to them, right? As a good friend of ours, Ed Milet, says, things aren't taught, they're caught, right? So it's leading by example. It's showing them that they could go after their dreams, but they have to see you going after your dreams, right? So,
show them, yeah.
Fatherhood for me has brought me great balance. It's given me a new purpose and a new purpose is new challenges, right? And those challenges now consume some of your time, which then help you not get into, when you have too much time, that's usually when you do dumb things, right? What do they say? Idle mind is the devil's playground, right?
Yeah.
So, as I started getting, more and more kids and more family, just more of my time now, I started hanging out with them and want to make them proud. Just the same way I wanted to make my parents proud, I want to make them proud. And, what a lot of people don't know about this is that I've kind of been a parent since I was 15 years old, because that's really when I started taking care of my siblings. And, some of the greatest texts that I've gotten from both my sister and brother is that I'm their hero. Like, they've literally texted me that. Wow. One texted me that for my birthday, and then the other one texted me that for Father's Day. And it's the best feeling in the world.
Imagine when your kids say that.
I know,
to
that's
you.
what I'm saying. Now I want my kids to say that. They don't know it yet because they're still young, but my siblings, they remember for the last 30-something years that, the things that I've been able to, help out with and stuff. And
I think that's the ultimate
at the end of the day, is you want to make
father.
them proud. Yeah, you want to make your kids proud.
Yeah.
And I look at my siblings as my kids too. So
Yeah. Last thing, what would you say is the best advice that you ever received?
So earlier I mentioned that at 16 years old, I asked the supervisor, or the manager at the time, and what they would advise me on, what's the best secret to success. And that's still in my head. The more pressure, the more resistance you can take, the more stress you can take, the more money you're going to make. And it just made a lot of sense to me, right? Because so many people crack when the pressure's on. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest advice that I've gotten, right? I now, the pursuit of greatness, I believe, is one of your biggest acts of service, because when you change your life, you give people hope and faith that their life can change too. You know, the other beautiful part about doing something great for your life is then you get to share it with people, right? Because there's no point of creating a beautiful life for yourself if you're not willing to share it with other people. So, you know, that's another beauty of wanting to go after your dreams. And that's why for me, I continue to want to grow, because I know it gives people that faith and hope that their life can change as well. And if you live for yourself, you can settle for less, but if you live for others, it'll require all of who you are. Yeah. And that's why it's important to want to do great things, because again, sometimes you won't do it for yourself, but you will do it for the people that you love. Yeah. And, you know, for me, you know, you want to make your kids proud. I wanted to make my siblings proud. I want to make my parents proud. And it was always more than just me. If it's just about you, you're not going to want to go out of your way. Now that I'm running 2 big companies, it's about the people that work in the company, right? I want to create better opportunities for them.
It's bigger than you.
It's bigger than you, right? And that's really, at the end of the day, contribution gives you a huge fulfillment. So
I love that. Edwin, I appreciate you, brother, for coming back on the podcast, man.
Yeah. Man, I talked about some stuff I've never talked to anybody in a podcast before. The beginning part I've never actually talked to anybody about. So.
I love it, man. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you, and I look forward to continuing our relationship, man. And just, just really, really excited for the future. Like I said, if there's anyone in my mind that has grown a lot, it's definitely like you're a part of that conversation. And just being afar, like I'm a big fan, and I wish you nothing but success as always.
Thank you, brother. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yep, of course. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you tuning into the podcast. Listen, big favor. If you know someone that would find value from this podcast, please do me a favor and pay it forward. What I mean by that is share it with them. Also, if you could give us a rating, it would help us with visibility. If you're watching on YouTube, like and please subscribe to the channel. But otherwise, Parables Podcast. I'm EJ Cruz. We are out, baby. Take care, everyone.